podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
Forest absolutely annihilate Brighton, who were their star men this weekend. The transfer deadline has passed, so who are the standout signings from the January window? And we have an update on the FPL Draft Zone Draft Leagues as the title and relegation races hot up across our 3 head-to-head leagues. Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about Draft FPL. I am Dom Crofts. I hope you are well. And today we are going to be looking back on an epic Gameweek 24 and then working our way through all the key transfer deals of the last month. It is going to be a busy one. Before we get started, just a reminder to subscribe to the pod if you have not done so already, and please feel free to follow us on social media as well. We are on X and Instagram. It's always lovely to hear from you. Our handle on both is at FPL Draft Zone. Easy to remember, it is the name of the show. So jump on board and say hello. But let's kick things off today with a whistle-stop look back at everything that happened in Game Week 24, and it all began with that lunchtime kickoff between Nottingham Forest and Brighton. And this one finished, it was close, Forest 7, Brighton 0. Chris Wood got a hat-trick, Anthony Elanga got a hat-trick of assists, Morgan Gibbs-White scored and got an assist. He was absolutely fantastic in this game. Nico Williams and Jota Silva also scored. It was the epitome of total humiliation for the Seagulls, and it was a great day for Nottingham Forest fans. In the 3 o'clock kickoffs, Bournemouth lost at home to Liverpool 2-0 at the Vitality. The scoreline didn't really tell the whole story of this game, but it was an impressive result for the league leaders. Salah getting a brace, Curtis Jones getting an assist, he was one we said to consider this week, and Diego Jota did indeed return to the bench, as we speculated he might. Everton, well, they thrashed Leicester 4-0 at Goodison Park as David Moyes' second spell in charge of the club continues to go from strength to strength. Doucouré scored one of the quickest goals of all time in the Premier League, Beto bagged a brace, and Ndiaye wrapped up the win, and Southampton won at Ipswich with tall Paul Onuachu getting another goal and picking up maximum bonus points. Newcastle were beaten at home for the second time in a row after Bournemouth won at St James's Park. Fulham went and did the same. The Toon took the lead through Jacob Murphy, but Muniz and Raul Jimenez scored to turn the tie in favour of Marco Silva's men. And then in the late kickoff on Saturday night, Wolves beat Aston Villa 2-0, with Unai Emery's men looking very vulnerable defensively. Bellegarde and Cunha got the goals. Cunha's goal was very pleasing on the eye, and Hwang, who was another recommendation last week, got an assist. Then on Sunday, Spurs won at Brentford with Son getting 2 assists, Pape Sarr getting on the score sheet, and Jed Spence picking up all 3 bonus points. And Manchester United's home form remains comically bad. They were beaten 2-0 by Crystal Palace thanks to a Mateta masterclass. He scored twice. Munoz and Lacroix got assists for the visitors, and those 3 players were all in the bonus points as well. And then it was the big one at the Emirates Stadium as Arsenal took on the champions Manchester City, and they absolutely battered them. It finished 5-1. Odegaard scored, Miles Lewis-Skelly scored, Ethan Nwaneri scored, Kai Havertz scored and got an assist, and Thomas Partey was also on the score sheet. Declan Rice got 2 assists. He may still be available on a few waivers, so one to keep an eye on there. And then finally on Monday night it finished Chelsea 2, West Ham United 1. Jarrod Bowen returned for the Hammers after injury and got his 12th return of the season. He's now got 6 goals and 6 assists for the season, but Chelsea turned it around in the second half thanks to a Pedro Neto equaliser and an own goal from Aaron Wan-Bissaka. There is still the small matter of the Merseyside derby, the final Merseyside derby at Goodison Park between Everton and Liverpool. That comes up on Wednesday the 12th of February, but that is still a long way off. And so this is the lie of the land with 1 match remaining, and hopefully you are already in a position where you've wrapped up a win before that game even takes place. Right, let's celebrate some winners and slate some losers.
The FPL Draft Zone. Winners and losers.
First up are some winners for you, and we kick off with Christopher Wood, who scored a hat-trick in Forest's win over Brighton. The New Zealand striker has now got 17 goals for the season. He's got 7 goals in his last 6 games, and he is now the leading point-scoring forward in the entire game. Who would have said that at the start of the season? He is leading ahead of the more traditional FPL strikers like Erling Haaland and Alexander Isak. His teammate Morgan Gibbs-White also deserves a shout-out. Another winner this week. He ended the game week with 16 points, and he has returned now in 7 of his last 10 games. He is absolutely flying at the moment. And of course, Mo Salah is another winner this week after he scored all the goals for Liverpool as they beat Bournemouth. We say it every week, but his stats are absolutely ridiculous this season. 23 games in the league, 21 goals, and 13 assists. That's 34 returns in 23 games. He has only failed to register a return in 4 games this season. As for the losers, well, it is hard to look beyond Brighton defenders this week, who looked totally bemused during the course of that game at Nottingham Forest. Lewis Dunk had the worst day of all. He was on the receiving end of a 7-goal spanking, and he scored one of them to finish his game week with -3 points. Manchester City defenders and Leicester defenders also in the mud. So those are some winners and those are some losers. But who is this week's ultimate FPL draft legend? A player who did the business and said, "I'm winning you your game week, gaffer." It's time to reveal our fantasy hero of the week. And spoiler alert, there's more than one of them.
Hero of the Week.
Yes, this week's fantasy heroes of the week are a select group of players. They are forwards who are generally considered nothing more than squad fodder, who came good and may well have helped you get your win in draft. First up, Mr. Paul Onuachu, who got the winner for Southampton at Ipswich and ended up with 7 points. Next up, Rodrigo Muniz, who scored the winner for Fulham and ended the game week with 8 points. And alongside those two, Beto, who scored twice in Everton's win over Leicester and got maximum bonus points to finish his game week with 13 points. These 3 strikers are 3 strikers who no one really wants in their squad. They are 3 strikers who are not fun to own week after week after week. They are 3 strikers who you would happily trade for a Mars bar and a bag of crisps. But these 3 strikers all came good all at once in game week 24 and delivered big for their managers Tall Paul, Rodrigo Muniz and Beto. We salute you. You are our fantasy heroes of the week.
Hero of the Week.
So game week 24 is almost done and dusted, aside from that Merseyside derby between Everton and Liverpool. And up next is game week 25, which is a long way off. There is no Premier League football this weekend due to it being an FA Cup weekend, so we are going to have to wait until Friday the 14th of February for our next full set of league fixtures. So rather than preview them now, we're actually going to take a look at all the key transfers that have happened in January. We're going to give you a little bit of an insight into the players that have come into the Premier League, and we're going to let you know who we think are the players that are worth bringing into your draft team. So we're going to go through all the new signings team by team in alphabetical order, and that means we're going to start with Arsenal, who are heavily linked with a move for a forward in January. Cunha was linked, Benjamin Sesko was linked, Ollie Watkins was linked, but in the end they did not make any signings whatsoever, and they will go into the second half of the season with Kai Havertz and Leandro Trossard as their 2 central striker options. Bad news if they get injuries, good news if you're a draft manager that owns either of them. Next up though are Aston Villa, who have been very busy this window. They've sold John Duran to Saudi Arabia, which is great news if you're an Ollie Watkins owner, as he is now the unequivocal first choice starting forward for Villa. But they have also strengthened across the board. Daniel Marlon has joined from Dortmund. We spoke about him last week. He's a player who can play on either wing. He can play as a false nine. He can play as a central striker as well. He had a disappointing season in Germany this season before his move to Villa. He scored just 3 goals in 14 games, but he was out of favour at Dortmund, and so a move was in the interests of the German and of the player. Last season, he was a little more prolific in front of goal. He finished the season with 13 goals in 27 Bundesliga appearances. The season before, he got 9 in 26. And then if we go back even further, he got 5 in 27 in his first season in Germany. And in his final season in Holland with PSV Eindhoven, he scored 19 times and got 8 assists in 32 games, which is very impressive. However, if we add the necessary Bundesliga tax to a player and assume they will not return as frequently in the Premier League, then we definitely need to add some Eredivisie tax as well. And that's bad news for Donyell Malen. All in all, I would say he could be a decent pickup in a larger league, but in 10-team leagues and under, he is very much a watch and wait for me. He is not a guaranteed starter. He has not been particularly consistent in front of goal over the years, and I personally would not rush to get him. Villa have also signed a right-back in the form of Andres Garcia, who has joined from Levante in Spain, where he got 3 goals and 3 assists in 22 games, playing in the Spanish second division. He can play further up the flank as well. He's been brought in predominantly as a backup to Matty Cash, who has had an injury-disrupted season, so much so that Garcia started Villa's last game in that defeat to Wolves, but he only lasted 45 minutes before he was replaced by Donyell Malen. Villa have got big defensive issues, but they have also got Ipswich Town at home next. So if they are going to keep a clean sheet anytime soon, it could well be in Gameweek 25. Garcia is likely to offer a route into that defence, but I just think they've got so many problems at the back that Ipswich may well still score against them. And long term, Garcia is a squad player and nothing more than that. So I would avoid for now. Axel Disasi has joined on loan from Chelsea, another defensive reinforcement. He will surely go straight into the team, given that they have been playing Kamara as a makeshift centre-back. And with all these new signings at the back, the likelihood is that it is going to take time for them to gel. So I wouldn't expect defensive solidity overnight. However, keep an eye on those fixtures. If you think there is a clean sheet opportunity in the near future, he would be a decent route into their backline. Although there aren't actually that many easy fixtures left for Villa. There is Ipswich in Game Week 25 if you think they can keep Liam Delap at bay. There is Southampton in Game Week 32. But other than that, it is not an easy end to the season for Unai Emery's men. Villa have also signed Marco Asensio, who has joined on loan from PSG. He is a Spanish international. He's won 38 caps for his country. He is a 3-time Champions League winner with Real Madrid, a 3-time title winner with Real Madrid. He also won a French title with PSG as well. He can play on the wing. He can play as an attacking midfielder. He can even be utilised as a forward. In fact, in his 12 games this season with PSG, he played as the centre forward on 10 of those 12 occasions, where he registered 2 goals and got 4 assists. So with Duran gone and Watkins injured, he may well slot in there to begin with. He made 286 appearances for Real Madrid, and in that time he scored 61 goals and got 32 assists. So that is 93 returns in 286 games, which works out as a return every 3 games, which isn't that bad. That average has gone up in his time with PSG, 47 games and 18 returns, so that's a return every 2.6 matches. He is a player who can deliver on a fairly regular basis. It does remain to be seen who Villa are going to start in those attacking areas going forward, because they have got a lot of options now. But I do think that Asensio will slot into their starting 11 sooner rather than later. He is almost certainly going to be classified in the game as a midfielder, and therefore he could be a decent pickup over the first few weeks, especially if he is played as an out-of-position striker. However, there is someone else vying for that role, and his name is Marcus Rashford, another loan signing we can sink our teeth into. Rashford's time at Manchester United has had a really stinky ending, hasn't it? Bad last season, even worse this season. Ruben Amorim calling him out week after week, questioning his commitment, questioning his work rate, questioning his desire to play for United. He has now got this chance of a fresh start at Villa. It feels like this is a move that absolutely has to work for him if he is going to have a future in the top flight going forwards, because if he doesn't impress at Villa, where does he go next? Saudi Arabia, I would imagine. So it is very much in his best interests to give it everything and show the world that he is still this top-class talent. We've said it before on this show, but it was only 2 seasons ago that he had a 34-goal season in all competitions, and his reputation and his history in the game will make him a player that draft managers will have very high up on their waiver priority list ahead of Game Week 25. And I think that's with good reason. We've already mentioned they have Ipswich Town at home next, and that is a game that screams Rashford Hall to me, a debut goal or two. He'll be out to make an impression. He'll want to shove the criticism down Amorim's throat. He will want to endear himself to the Villa fans, and I have a feeling he will do just that. And if he gets off to a good start, I can see him scoring a decent number of goals between now and the end of the season. He will be a guaranteed starter in this Villa side, considering how much they must be paying him in wages. And after Ipswich, it is Chelsea at home as well, so double home fixtures in a row, and Chelsea don't keep many clean sheets either. So I would put Rashford very high on your waiver list for this week. He will almost certainly be available in the vast majority of leagues. Get him in, see what he does in the first few weeks. He may even start up front if the Ollie Watkins injury is a bad one, and if Emery considers him a more viable striker option than Asensio, and see if there are signs of the old Rashford. Because if there are, you may well have picked up a midfielder who can get you double figures between now and the end of the campaign, and that could be the difference between winning or losing your draft league. And if it doesn't work out, if you do pick him up and he has a slow start, and he looks like the Rashford of sort of the last 18 months, just bin him off. Bin him off. The rewards of getting him in early are far higher than the risks of getting him in later. If he bangs from the outset and you've missed out, you will regret it. Let's move on to Bournemouth. They've had this amazing season so far, but they have lost their first and second choice strikers. We thought they might be in the market for a replacement, but they have really only invested in players for the future. They've got in 2 youngsters from Chelsea. Another has signed from DC United, and they've also signed a teenage fullback from South America. None of them started against Liverpool last time out, although a few of them were on the bench. None of them are viable draft assets, in my opinion, and nor is their transfer deadline day signing Eli Junior Krupi, who is a forward who has signed from FC Lorient. He is another teenager, just 18. He has 9 goals and 2 assists in 17 games for the French club, but he is going to remain in France until the end of the season and join up with the Cherries in the summer. Let's move on to Brentford then, who have signed a right-back on loan from Fiorentina. His name is Michael Coyote. He made his debut in that defeat to Spurs at the weekend, played the final 14 minutes. He played 26 times in Serie A prior to this move, where he scored once and got 2 assists. He will be a regular at Brentford between now and the end of the season, but his defensive capabilities far outweigh his attacking talent. So if you are going to be bringing him in, you're really going to be bringing him in for his clean sheet potential. And given that Brentford have the 6th worst defensive record in the top flight, that means he is probably an avoid in draft. Brighton have made a couple of signings. First up is Iran Kashin from Derby, who's a defender. He's played nearly 150 times for Derby County. He plays on the left-hand side of the defence, and he will offer another option for Brighton at the back, but he is unlikely to become a regular anytime soon. They've also brought in a young striker, Stefan Simas, who we spoke about last week. He is a young Greek striker who is playing for Nuremberg on loan from PAOK. He will remain in Germany until the summer, so again, not one we need to worry about this season, but one to keep an eye on for next season. Chelsea did not strengthen their squad in January. They focused on slimming it down instead. We've already talked about Disasi going to Villa. They've also dispensed with João Felix, Carney Chukwuemeka and Ben Chilwell, who we will talk about in a moment, because Chilwell has joined Crystal Palace. We'll start, though, with the signing of Roman Esse, who signed for Palace from Millwall, a very typical Crystal Palace transfer. He is a 19-year-old attacking midfielder. He scored 4 times for the South Londoners in the Championship this season, and he picked up an assist as well. He got 2 goals in 25 games last season. He's already made an impact since signing for Palace, but again, he is a bit of a watch and wait for me. See how many minutes he gets, see how quickly he'll be transitioned into that first team, and see if playing with better players improves his goal output. He was not involved in the win against Manchester United, so he is certainly not someone to consider right now. He does, however, look like a good prospect. Millwall fans certainly seem to think he has a bright future, but I think realistically he will take a bit of time to acclimatise to the top flight, and that means he's more likely to be a draft prospect next season rather than this season. The Eagles have, however, signed Ben Chilwell from Chelsea. He's joined on loan, and Chilwell looks like the perfect signing for Crystal Palace. His signing will definitely impact owners of Tyrick Mitchell, who has been a guaranteed starter until now, but is now someone who will surely see his minutes reduced. Chilwell is an FPL veteran. He is someone who is so attack-minded that it wasn't so long ago that draft managers would have been prioritising him as a defensive pick on draft night. Enzo Maresca has jettisoned him from the Chelsea squad this season. He's not played at all. But if you look at his previous season's tallies, he is someone we should all be looking at ahead of Gameweek 25. His best season in terms of attacking returns came in the 2020-2021 campaign, where he scored 3 goals and got 6 assists in just over 2,000 minutes, an attacking return every 2.8 games. In 2 of the last 3 seasons, though, he has failed to play more than 1,000 minutes. He got just 541 minutes in the 2021-22 season and just 752 minutes last season. But what is amazing about those 2 seasons is that even with those limited minutes, he still got 3 goals and 3 assists, which actually works out to an attacking return every 2.3 games, which is outrageous. The other season, over that 3-year period, by the way, he played 1,402 minutes, and in that time he still got 5 attacking returns. So again, a good ratio of an attacking return every 3 games. Now, if you throw in the fact that Crystal Palace are playing very well right now, they're defending very well right now, they've got 3 clean sheets in their last 4, if Ben Chilwell can get into that starting 11 sooner rather than later, he could be an absolutely outstanding pickup for the rest of the season. Munoz on the right-hand side, Chilwell on the left-hand side. That screams attacking returns from a wing-back perspective. On to Everton. They've signed a long-term target in the form of Carlos Alcaraz, who has joined on loan from Flamengo with an option to buy at the end of the season. He is a former Southampton attacking midfielder. He'll add a bit more creativity to Everton's ranks. In his time on the South Coast, he played 48 games, scored 8 goals, got 5 assists. He's also had a spell at Juve in Italy. He predominantly plays in central midfield, although Southampton played him further forward in a number 10 role. He is someone who was really highly thought of a few years ago, with some of the biggest clubs in Europe keen to sign him, but his career has stalled a bit, and he is probably a watch and wait for now. I imagine he'll be on the bench for Everton's next game against Liverpool, so see if he gets on in that, see if he looks capable of making an impact, and then maybe he could be an option going forward. Fulham, well, they have not done any business in January outside of recalling a couple of youngsters from loan, so we'll move on to Ipswich, who have been busy in the window. They've brought in Ben Godfrey to strengthen their defence. Jadon Philogene and Julio Enciso have been brought in to improve their midfield options. Godfrey is a hard avoid for me as a defender playing in a struggling side, but in larger leagues, Philogene and Enciso could be worth thinking about. Philogene nearly joined Ipswich in the summer, but he ended up going to Villa. He spent last season at Hull, where he got 18 returns in 32 games. That's 12 goals and 6 assists. He will be a regular for Ipswich going forward, but the truth is he's playing in a team that is going to struggle in the main, and so he's really only an option for selected weeks. Ipswich's next decent game is not until April, when they have Wolves at home in game week 31. And then their final 4 fixtures are okay, but it may be too late by then. They've got Everton, Brentford, Leicester and West Ham. However, I suspect their fate will already be sealed. The same can also be said of Julio Enciso, who has looked like a great prospect in the years that he's been at Brighton. He's made an impact with the Seagulls on and off, but whether he's a realistic draft prospect playing in this Ipswich side is another matter entirely. And then on deadline day, Ipswich brought in a new goalkeeper, Alex Palmer from West Brom, and a youngster from Chelsea. Palmer may well get minutes given the form of Muric, but whether you want to invest in an Ipswich keeper is another question entirely. Leicester have strengthened their backline with the signing of Woyo Koulibaly. He made his debut in the win at Spurs in Gameweek 23, and he is likely to become a first-team regular at the Foxes sooner rather than later. He joins from Parma in Italy. He's a solid right-back rather than one who is likely to get you many attacking returns. He got 2 assists in Parma's promotion-winning season last year. He's got another 2 assists in Serie A this year. Parma are just outside the relegation zone in Italy, so they are in a similar position to Leicester, and you can expect pretty similar returns if you decide to bring Koulibaly in, which you absolutely should not. Liverpool have not made any moves in January. They will head into the second half of the season with the same squad that has served them so well up to this point, but the champions Manchester City have been busy this window. They have brought in Abdou Kadir Kusanov from Lens for £33.6 million. He's a 20-year-old centre-back. He's been brought in as a long-term option for the club. He had a fairly dreadful debut against Chelsea, didn't get on against Arsenal. I think he will get a lot of minutes going forward, but you need to weigh up if he is going to earn himself a regular place in that starting 11, and you need to weigh up if City are going to start to become a little more solid at the back. And those 2 questions remain up in the air at the moment, so I would avoid for now. Victor Reis has also joined. He's another defender, but very much one for the future. Then there is Omar Mamouche, who will almost certainly already have been picked up in your draft league, but he looks like a great option if he is still miraculously available. 25 returns in 17 Bundesliga appearances this season before joining City. That's 15 goals and 10 assists. He also got 6 returns in 6 games in the Europa League, and he got a respectable 12 goals and 6 assists last season as well, so he would be a great pickup if you can get him over the line. He is certainly the pick of the City signings for sure, and he's even more valuable given the fact that he is a striker, and we are not exactly overflowing with forward options in FPL Draft this season. Nico Gonzalez has also signed for City. He joined on deadline day. He is a midfielder who joins from FC Porto. He's been a long-term target of the club. He used to play for Barcelona. He leaves Porto having played 68 times for the club, where he got 9 goals and 9 assists. He's a versatile midfielder. He can play deep. He can play as a box-to-box midfielder. He's had a lot of success scoring from late runs into the box with Porto, and he will be a very necessary addition to City's midfield, which, let's face it, has looked non-existent at times this season. Manchester United have signed Danish international wing-back Patrick Dorgu from Lecce. Dorgu played 57 games for the Italian side. He got 5 goals. He's won the 2nd most ground duels in the Italian top flight this season. He's managed the 4th most take-ons as well, so he should fit well into Ruben Amorim's wing-back system, and there's every chance he will be a real threat going forward. He scored with his first touch on his international debut earlier this season, and crucially Manchester United are away in their next 2 games, which is a huge boost for them considering they've lost 5 of their last 6 games at Old Trafford. I imagine he will come straight into their starting 11. He is the first signing of the Amorim era, and I think he'll do well in time, but United are just such a work in progress at the moment. I'm not sure he's worth bringing in just yet. I don't think they're defensively secure enough to justify having one of their backline in your squad. However, if you have a rotating 5th defender spot, he might be worth a punt on any given week. But as a long-term hold, I would certainly avoid for now. And the same can be said for Aidan Heaven, a young defender who has joined United from Arsenal. He has been told he will be a first-team player from the get-go at United. And with the injury to Lisandro Martinez, he may well get minutes sooner than expected. But again, defensively, United are just too much of a mess right now. So he's not someone I would be looking at bringing in just yet. Newcastle did not make any signings in January, so we'll move on to Nottingham Forest. Briefly, they made one, Wayne Hennessy, who has been added to their goalkeeping roster. He is going to be 3rd choice at best for Forest, though, so he's not worth thinking about as a draft option. Southampton assets are not really high on any draft manager's wish lists, but they have made some moves in the market. They've signed a 23-year-old Brazilian left-back called Wellington, who made his debut in that win over Ipswich, and he got a debut yellow card for his trouble. They've also signed an 18-year-old defender from Valenciennes, and they've completed the loan signing of Albert Gronbach from Rennes. He is an attacking midfielder. He won 2 titles in his time in Norway with Bodo Glimt. He scored 30 goals in 87 games for them, which is respectable. Then moved to France for around £15 million, where he got 2 goals and 1 assist in 16 games. And now he's rocked up on the south coast to try and rescue some respect for his new team. Is he a talent? Maybe. Is he a draft option? Probably not. Why? Because he plays for Southampton, and Southampton are rubbish. On to Spurs. They've been busy. They've signed a goalkeeper, Antonin Kinski, who has played more minutes than any other January signing so far, as he's come into the team ahead of Fraser Forster in goal for Spurs. Obviously, Spurs are not in a good moment right now in terms of an injury crisis affecting all areas of the pitch, but in particular their defence, and that means Kinski is not really a viable option right now. But once the likes of Romero and Van der Ven return, and if Postecoglou either finds a way to turn things around or is replaced, and if Kinski then keeps his place ahead of Vicario when he returns, maybe, just maybe, he would be an option. He'd certainly be okay as a backup goalkeeper for your draft team. Kevin Danso has also joined on loan to strengthen Spurs' backline. He was linked with a move to Wolves throughout January, but Spurs won that battle and they will hope he adds a bit of solidity to their defence. And on deadline day, Spurs also signed Matthias Tell from Bayern Munich on loan. Tell is a French forward. He's yet to represent his country at international level, but he has got a good goal-scoring record at all the junior international levels. He got 5 in 9 for the under-17s, 8 in 11 for the under-18s, 5 in 10 for the under-19s, 3 in 8 for the under-21s. He's made 8 appearances for Bayern Munich this season, played just 253 minutes. He hasn't registered an attacking return in those appearances, but he did hit double figures in all competitions last season, 10 goals and 6 assists in 41 appearances. We don't know what position he will be placed into by the Bods at FPL Towers. He has played on the wing for Bayern, but the general consensus is that he is a striker. And with Dominic Solanke out for the foreseeable future, Richarlison injury prone, and Timo Werner, Matthias Tell could well represent an excellent signing for Spurs and therefore an excellent signing for your draft team. He has got Champions League pedigree, he has moved to get more minutes, and he wouldn't have signed for Spurs if there wasn't a guarantee of those minutes. So hopefully they'll classify him as a striker, and if they do, he should be high on the waiver lists for Gameweek 25. And with good reason, he'll be playing in an attack-minded team, and they've got Manchester United and Ipswich next, so good opportunities for him to return there. If he's a forward, I'll be trying to get him in. If he's a midfielder, I will be avoiding him, but he is certainly a player that will get a lot of interest from draft managers, and with good reason. West Ham, well, they've been desperate to bring in a striker all January after losing Fulkrug and Mikhail Antonio to long-term injuries, and they have finally got one in the form of Evan Ferguson, who joins on loan from Brighton. Ferguson played under Graham Potter at Brighton. He joins up with his old manager for the second time with a promise of regular first-team football. Key to the deal, he played just 234 minutes this season under Fabian Hürzeler. He's only played more than 20 minutes twice this season and more than an hour only once. Hürzeler didn't seem to fancy him, but Potter certainly will, and that is great news for draft managers who have been struggling with so few options in the front line this season. Ferguson has shown great potential in the past. We all remember the hat-trick he scored against Newcastle a few seasons back, and if he can rediscover that form, he could be a brilliant signing for the Hammers. He's technically good, he's strong, he's a composed finisher, and he's going to be playing alongside some stellar attacking talents who should be able to create chances for him. Paqueta, Kudos and Jared Bowen, with Somerville as well. 3 of those 4 behind Ferguson, and there are definitely goals to be had if you can waiver in the Irishman. If you are short of a forward and it's been costing you all season long, or perhaps maybe you drafted Ivan Toney on draft night and have been paying the price ever since, hello, that'll be me, then hopefully Ferguson is the January transfer gift you have been waiting for. He may well fire you up your draft league. He may well improve West Ham's prospects. He may well be a signing that you have to make in Game Week 25. West Ham have also recalled James Ward-Prowse from his loan spell at Nottingham Forest. It didn't work out for him at the City ground, but he seems like the sort of player that Graham Potter will warm to, and he is, of course, a proven FPL asset with set pieces key to his value, and with a 6-foot-plus striker to aim for now, maybe he will have a strong second half of the season as well. In his last 4 seasons, Ward-Prowse has twice finished with 15 attacking returns, and in the other 2 seasons he got 14 attacking returns and 13 attacking returns. So he is a player who, if he can get into that West Ham midfield, will offer consistent goal involvement based on his Premier League track record. And finally on to Wolves, who have improved their defence with the signing of Man Mountain Emmanuel Agabadou, who looked really solid against Arsenal and Villa. Players were bouncing off him in both games, and Vitor Pereira seems to be prioritising their defence in this window. Whether we can really look at Wolves defenders as draft options is another matter entirely, but between game weeks 28 and 31, their fixtures are good. So if there have been signs of improvement at the back, he may well be worth thinking about as a fifth defensive option. Then Wolves play Everton, Southampton, West Ham and Ipswich during that period, and that will of course go a long way to deciding their top flight future. On deadline day they also brought in Nasa Dijiga from Red Star Belgrade, who is another defender, and they signed Marshall Munetsi from Ream, who is a midfielder and a Zimbabwe international. He loves a goal from midfield. He hit double figures for goal involvements a couple of seasons ago. He has 6 attacking returns in 19 so far this season, and he could be an option that is very much a watch and wait for now. See if he can break into that Wolves starting 11 and see if he can make an impact. So those are the key signings that have been made this January transfer window, and of that little lot, the standout options are, drumroll please, no? Okay, forget about that then. The standout options are Omar Mamouche of Manchester City, who may well already be taken in your league, Marcus Rashford, now of Aston Villa fame, Matthias Tell of Spurs, particularly if he is classified as a forward, Evan Ferguson of West Ham United, who is definitely classified as a forward, Ben Chilwell of Crystal Palace, who could be a sublime signing if he gets regular minutes at Selhurst Park, and maybe as a bit of a punt, Patrick Dorgu of Manchester United for selected games only, probably just away games based on United's home form. Right, that is transfers done. It has been way too long since we had an update on our FPL Draft Zone draft leagues, so we're going to rattle through them now and see who is on course for a title tilt, who is on course for promotion, and who is set for a season of misery and relegation. A reminder that the bottom 4 in the Draft Zone Premier League and Championship are relegated, and the top 4 in the Draft Zone Championship and League One are promoted. We will start in League One, where Tyler Keller went into the game week 3 points clear of the chasing pack at the top of the table. He came up against Simon Sang's Hakuna Mateta, who was in 4th place and on course for one of those top 4 promotion places. With one game to play, that Merseyside derby, it looks like Tyler is going to edge this one with a 56-point haul. He has Chris Wood to thank for his success. Simon has got a double Liverpool defence still to play against Everton, but they are going to have to help him make up a 22-point deficit, which seems unlikely. Thomas Helleso's Earth Wyndham Maguire started the weekend in 2nd place. He faced a huge clash with 3rd place Sekiran Padichetti. It was a chance to pull 6 points clear of 3rd, and as it stands, Sekirin is on course to close that gap. He's got Chris Richards set to come off his bench and give him 6 points thanks to that clean sheet against Manchester United, and he's still got Garner Gay to play in that second game against Liverpool. The race for that final 4th place spot is tight, with only 6 points separating 4 teams. Joe Ryan, Adam TW and James Doyle will all be hoping to mount a late promotion push. I am also in this league, by the way, and I'm currently down in 8th, which is mega annoying when you consider that I have the 3rd highest points tally in the league. But hey, that's variance, isn't it? That's variance. Counts for nothing in head-to-head. Great, really pleased. Love a bit of variance. In the Championship, the teams in real danger of the drop are Jan Sandstad's SL Biersen and Uppershak Prajapati's Gakpo Hive. They started the weekend 11 and 9 points from safety, respectively. Jan faced a tough test against 2nd place Tom Kirkup and his side Holt Fiction, and it looks like Jan's going to be well beaten in this one. Tom's got an impressive 69 points haul so far, with Salah, Nico Williams and Beto all delivering for him. Uppershak was up against Gabriel Blythe-House's Hawk Chouameni, and that one is currently heading in favour of Gabriel, who leads 44-15. Gabriel and Isak Kana are occupying those final 2 relegation spots right now, and they look like they're going to stay there after this weekend, but they are very much within touching distance of safety, and possibly even promotion as well. They are only 9 points off that final promotion spot. At the top, Louis Tam's Cull Hall Shack United went into game week 24 2 points clear of Holt Fiction. They took on Isaac's Easy As, and it looks like the league leader is going to be beaten this week. It's 37 points all right now, but E6 still has Pickford, Mikalenko, Luis Diaz and Darwin Núñez all to play. The final 2 promotion places are taken by Mount United and Shoulders, Knees and Tony, but Venceremos is in hot pursuit. And then finally in the FPL Draft Zone Premier League, which is a 14-team league, the bottom 4 teams going into this weekend were Pancho Palomos, Manchester Rovers, who are picking up a win this week as they seek a miraculous escape. Richard Ellingers pulling up trees, also look like they're on course for 3 points as they look to drag a few more teams into the relegation mix. My Name is My Name and Whitefield's Warriors are the 2 teams that make up that bottom 4, managed by Paul Dunn and Mike Whitefield. Meanwhile, at the top of the table and running away with it right now is Odin Erkedal Glatvet. He was 5 points clear heading into the weekend, and it looks like that lead is going to be maintained, which is all the more impressive given his forward options are Richarlison, Adam Armstrong and Eddie Nketiah. George Stahopoulos and his side Let's Roll is doing an admirable FPL draft impression of Arsenal and doing everything he can to make it a bit of a title race at the top. So there we have it, that is us done for another week. There are no waiver tips this week given the time between this show and the next game week, but we will be back before Game Week 25 with a full preview. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the pod, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or a glorious review on Spotify or whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. And make sure you're following us on X and Instagram as well. Our handle on both is at FPL Draft Zone, and we are on Blue Sky, where our handle is the rather wordy at fpldraftzone.bsky.social. So that is it for this week. I hope Game Week 24 went according to plan. I hope you got that win in your head-to-head league or a massive points haul in your classic league. And until next time, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.